Before we begin this story, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever had your achievements stolen or minimized, if you've ever been the one holding everything together while someone else took all the credit, hit that like button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their pain is valid. And comment below with just one word, seen, because today, you will be. This is the story of how I went from being my family's invisible hero to reclaiming my power and my $4.6 million fortune. My name is Carmen, and for 32 years, I lived in Chesapeake, Virginia, in the shadow of my younger sister, Madison. But this wasn't just sibling rivalry, this was systematic, calculated destruction that would take me 13 years to fully understand and escape. In narcissistic families, there's always a scapegoat, the person who gets blamed for everything, who becomes the target of abuse and family mobbing. But there's also another role that's equally damaging, the family hero, most often the firstborn child who adapts to chaos by becoming super competent at everything, being very helpful at home, excelling in school, sports, and making the family look well-adjusted and normal on the surface. That was me. The straight-A student. The scholarship winner. The one who cooked dinner when mom was too tired, translation, drunk. The one who helped dad with his business books when he was overwhelmed, translation, gambling again. The one who made sure Madison got to school, did her homework, had clean clothes. Madison was 3 years younger than me, with golden blonde hair that caught the light like spun silk, and eyes that could shift from innocent to calculating in a heartbeat. While I, as the family hero, got more attention and praise from our parents, which any child would want, I was also being pushed into a role where my purpose was to support, attend to, and provide supply for the narcissistic family system, often to the complete exclusion of my own needs and wants. The pattern started early. When I was 8 and Madison was 5, I won my first science fair. I'd spent weeks building a working volcano, complete with a detailed presentation about tectonic plates. The morning of the fair, Madison accidentally knocked it over, sending papier-mâché lava across our kitchen floor. Carmen's volcano exploded, she wailed to our parents, tears streaming down her cherubic face. I was just trying to help. My parents rushed to comfort her. It's okay, sweetheart. Carmen shouldn't have left it where you could bump into it. I spent the next 2 hours rebuilding what I could, arriving late to the science fair with a lopsided volcano held together with scotch tape. I still won second place. Madison told everyone she'd helped me build it. This became our dynamic. Every achievement I earned, Madison would either claim partial credit or find a way to make herself the center of attention. When I made varsity track, Madison suddenly developed exercise-induced asthma that required both parents at every doctor's appointment, which always seemed to coincide with my meets. When I got into honors classes, Madison was diagnosed with a learning disability that meant she needed extra tutoring funded by my part-time job earnings because family helps family. As the hero of the family, I was unconsciously tasked with proving to the rest of the world that our family was all right, holding on to the idea that if I was successful enough, then our family couldn't be that bad. But the pressure was crushing me from the inside. By high school, I'd learned to hide my achievements. I'd win academic awards and tell no one. I'd get job promotions at the local bookstore where I worked and keep it quiet. I opened a savings account at a bank across town where no one knew my family. Every dollar I could spare went into it, my secret escape fund. Madison, meanwhile, had perfected her role as the perpetual victim. She wasn't just the golden child who could do no wrong, she was the wounded bird who needed constant attention and resources. In our narcissistic family dynamic, she had mastered the golden child scapegoat dynamic where one child becomes idealized and can do no wrong, while the other is devalued and can do no good. But here's the twist, I wasn't the scapegoat. I was something more insidious. I was the family hero whose light was deliberately dimmed so Madison's manufactured struggles could shine brighter. Every time I succeeded, she found a way to steal that moment, to make it about her pain, her needs, her drama. The summer before my senior year, I received a full scholarship to the University of Virginia. It was my golden ticket out, my chance at freedom. I made the mistake of telling my family at dinner. "That's wonderful, Carmen," Mom said, her eyes already glazing over with wine. "You'll be close enough to come home and help with Madison." Actually, Madison interjected, pushing her food around her plate, "I've been thinking about applying to UVA too. But my learning disability means I'll need extra support. Maybe Carmen could defer for a year so we could go together? That way she could help me adjust." My father nodded thoughtfully. "That's not a bad idea. Family first, right, Carmen? I felt that familiar panic that heroes feel when losing control, the deep loneliness that comes from being good at managing others but unable to be truly known or intimate outside of those helping roles. I'll think about it, I said, knowing I wouldn't. That night, I called the university and accepted immediately. I also did something else. I started documenting everything. Every manipulation, every stolen moment, every gaslight-dimmed achievement. I didn't know why exactly, just that something in me knew I'd need evidence someday. Like sea turtles can fly, one of the moderators of Reddit's r/raised by Narcissists community once advised, when there have been situations where a person's life seemed in immediate danger, we have contacted the admins to let them know. I was beginning to realize my psychological life was in danger, and I needed to protect myself. Madison's jealousy intensified when I left for college. She'd text me constantly during classes, call with emergencies during exams, and show up unannounced on weekends with tales of family crises that required my immediate attention. She failed her own college applications, which she blamed on the trauma of me abandoning the family. But something shifted in college. Away from the toxic fog of my family, I could finally see clearly. The narcissistic parent, or in my case, sibling, uses favoritism as a tool of abuse, serving the golden child first at the dinner table, and if there isn't as much left for the hero child, well, that's just how it is. Every holiday I returned home, the pattern was the same, but now I could name it. I started therapy at the campus counseling center. My therapist introduced me to terms I'd never heard before: narcissistic abuse, enmeshment, trauma bonding. She helped me understand that the deepest issue that adult heroes live with is loneliness. They make good leaders and managers but often have a hard time being close and intimate with others outside of work roles. Your sister isn't just jealous, my therapist explained during one session. She has narcissistic traits that make her view your achievements as threats to her own ego. Every success you have is experienced by her as a personal attack. But she's my sister, I protested. She loves me. Does she? My therapist asked gently. Or does she love what you do for her? That question haunted me. I started paying attention to our interactions differently. Madison never asked about my life unless she needed something. She never celebrated my wins unless she could claim credit. She never supported my dreams unless they served her needs. After college, I moved to Richmond for a job in financial consulting. Madison had dropped out of community college and was living at home, supported by our parents and a rotating cast of boyfriends who inevitably left when they realized she was more interested in their wallets than their hearts. The geographic distance helped, but Madison found ways to insert herself. She'd apply to jobs at my company without telling me, then rage when she didn't get hired, accusing me of sabotaging her. She'd show up at my apartment with suitcases, claiming she needed just a few weeks to get back on her feet, stays that stretched into months until I forcibly evicted her. Like that viral TikTok story about the narcissistic aunt who beat her disabled niece while claiming she was faking it for attention, Madison had perfected the art of claiming victimhood while perpetrating abuse. She'd steal my credit cards, then cry about how hard it was to be the family failure. She'd seduce my boyfriends, then sob about how men always chose me over her. The worst part? Our parents enabled it all. They had become the classic enablers who felt like they had to keep the family going, over and over, taking on Madison's problems and responsibilities, martyrs who supported not only the dysfunctional behavior but also prime enforcers of the codependent roles that everyone played. But through it all, I was building something Madison couldn't see or steal, at least, not yet. My career was taking off. My investments were growing. My network was expanding. I was creating a life of value, both financial and personal, that existed entirely outside the toxic family ecosystem. I thought I was free. I thought I'd escaped. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come, and that Madison's narcissistic appetite had only been whetted by small victories. She was about to attempt her greatest theft yet, not just of a moment or an achievement, but of my entire life's work. The stage was set for a confrontation 13 years in the making, and neither of us knew that it would end with one sister's complete destruction and the other's ultimate liberation. By 28, I had built something extraordinary in the shadows. While Madison performed her victim narrative for our family and her social media followers, I had quietly become a force in the financial consulting world. But my true achievement, my $4.6 million secret, was something even I didn't fully grasp until the day everything changed. It started innocently enough. After 3 years at the consulting firm, I'd noticed patterns in cryptocurrency markets that others missed. My background in data analysis, combined with an almost obsessive need to control something in my life, a trait common in family heroes, led me to develop a trading algorithm during my spare time. Like many family heroes, I had learned to survive and thrive with crisis surrounding me, and when there was no crisis, I was on high alert for the crisis to come. This hypervigilance, painful in personal relationships, was perfect for tracking volatile crypto markets. I started small, $5,000 from my savings. Within 6 months, it had grown to $50,000. Within a year, $200,000. I told no one, especially not my family. I incorporated an LLC in Delaware, opened accounts in different banks, and even used a P.O. box for all related correspondence. Every precaution seemed paranoid at the time, but my therapist had taught me something crucial. When you name something, it's no longer the elephant in the room, but don't get stuck in the research phase. I wasn't stuck. I was building. Madison, meanwhile, had started a lifestyle coaching business that consisted mainly of Instagram posts about toxic people and cutting out negativity, ironic, considering she was the common denominator in every piece of drama she described. Our parents funded this venture, naturally, just as they'd funded her failed boutique, her abandoned food truck idea, and her brief stint as a social media consultant. Like those viral TikTok stories about narcissistic mothers demanding their children's houses because they need it more, Madison had developed an entitlement to everything I'd earned. She'd joke at family dinners about how Carmen's so good with money, she should manage mine too. Everyone would laugh. I'd smile tightly, knowing she was fishing for information about my finances. The algorithm's success had led to consulting offers from major crypto exchanges. I negotiated these contracts carefully, ensuring that my intellectual property remained mine. By my 30th birthday, between the algorithm's trading profits, consulting fees, and strategic investments in emerging blockchain companies, my net worth had quietly crossed $4.6 million. But I lived like I made $60,000 a year. Same modest apartment. Same reliable Honda Civic. Same wardrobe from Target and thrift stores. The only splurge I allowed myself was quality therapy, twice a week with a specialist in narcissistic abuse recovery. During this time, I also joined a support group at Greener Side Counseling in Jacksonville during a work trip, where the focus was on aspects of narcissistic abuse, underlying relational dynamics and a clear path to emotional recovery with non-judgmental and open dialogue from others with similar struggles. It was there I met Sarah, another family hero who'd built a successful tech company while her narcissistic brother claimed credit for inspiring her. Document everything, Sarah advised over coffee after one session. Not just the abuse, but your achievements. Every contract, every success, every timestamp that proves it was you, not them. Narcissists rewrite history, and they're convincing. I took her advice further than she probably intended. I began recording phone calls with Madison, legal in Virginia with one-party consent. I screenshot every text. I saved every email. I even installed security cameras in my apartment after Madison surprised me with another uninvited visit and I noticed things moved around after she left. The documentation revealed patterns I hadn't consciously noticed. Madison's crises always coincided with my successes. The day I was promoted to senior consultant? She was suicidally depressed and needed immediate family intervention. The week I closed my biggest client? She had a health scare that turned out to be nothing but required my parents' life savings for testing. For narcissists, abuse isn't always overt and direct, it can be subtle, like using triangulation between family members, where abuse is indirect, using the golden child as a proxy to punish the scapegoat or hero. My therapist helped me see it. She's not just stealing your moments, Carmen. She's trying to steal your identity. In her mind, your success is hers by right. You're not a separate person to her, you're an extension of her ego that's malfunctioning by being independent. The revelation was chilling but liberating. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I was dealing with someone who fundamentally could not see me as a separate human being deserving of my own life. According to the DSM-4 between 2% and 16% of the population in clinical settings are diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, but many more exhibit narcissistic traits without meeting the full diagnostic criteria. Madison was likely one of them. I started planning my complete exit from the family system. It would take time, strategy, and careful execution. I consulted with a family law attorney about protecting my assets. I met with a financial advisor about structuring my wealth to be judgment-proof. I even spoke with a security consultant about protecting my digital footprint. "You're being paranoid," my college friend Jessica said when I told her some of my precautions. "No," I replied, thinking of all the therapy sessions, all the support group stories, all the documented patterns. "I'm being prepared." Madison's escalation started subtly. She began showing up at professional events in Richmond, introducing herself to my colleagues as Carmen's sister, the one she learned everything from. She created a LinkedIn profile that essentially mirrored mine but with inflated credentials. She even started a financial blog where she posted simplified versions of strategies I'd mentioned in passing, claiming them as her revolutionary insights. Sometimes there are stories with mysterious omissions and glaring inconsistencies, the kind which leave you asking who the narcissist really is. A sudden leap from family life as usual to bitter estrangement, with the reasons why left thoroughly unexplained. But I was documenting everything, creating an undeniable paper trail. The turning point came during Thanksgiving of my 31st year. Madison announced she was writing a book about overcoming family dysfunction to achieve financial success. The sample chapter she read aloud was my life story, with her as the protagonist and me recast as the supportive but less ambitious sister. "Carmen's always been so good at following my lead," she said, smiling at me across the table. "I'm so proud of how far she's come with my guidance." Our parents beamed. Our extended family nodded approvingly. And I sat there, feeling something inside me finally snap, not into rage, but into cold, calculating clarity. After all, quarantining themselves off from experiencing their pain was a highly successful survival strategy in very challenging circumstances, but what possible advantage could there be in pulling the scab off old wounds? The answer is that they won't lose any qualities that made them heroic, but they will strengthen their compassion, empathy, and deepen their capacity to love. I was done quarantining my pain. I was done being the hero who enabled her villain. That night, I made a decision. I would let Madison hang herself with her own rope. I started feeding her false information about my struggles and failures. I mentioned fake investment losses, imaginary client complaints, fictional setbacks. She absorbed it all greedily, incorporating it into her narrative of being the successful sister who was generously trying to help her floundering sibling. Meanwhile, my real success accelerated. The algorithm had caught the attention of a major investment firm. They offered to buy it for $12 million. I negotiated them down to $8 million with better terms that kept me as a consultant and partial owner. The deal would close in 6 months. But first, Madison would make her move, the one I'd been documenting, preparing for, almost orchestrating through strategic vulnerability. Character assassination is when someone systematically tries to destroy your credibility and reputation, often through lies, distortion, and emotional manipulation. It's one of the narcissist's most powerful weapons because it shifts the spotlight off their behavior and puts you on trial instead. Madison was about to attempt the ultimate character assassination. And I was ready with the ultimate reversal. March 15, 2024. The date is burned into my memory like a brand. It was the day of the Richmond Financial Innovation Summit, where I was scheduled to receive the Young Innovator Award for my contributions to cryptocurrency analysis. Only 5 people knew about this honor: the award committee, my direct supervisor, and unfortunately, Madison, who had somehow intercepted the congratulatory email when she borrowed my laptop during her last visit. I should have known something was wrong when Madison insisted on attending to support me. She'd never shown interest in my professional events before. But there she was, dressed in an outfit nearly identical to mine. She'd asked what I was wearing to coordinate for photos, arriving an hour early to network. A common tactic is to manipulate the child emotionally, turning them against the other parent through subtle or overt alienation strategies. Narcissistic parents may convince the child that the other parent doesn't love or care for them, using the child as a pawn to feed their need for control and revenge. Madison had perfected the same technique with our extended family, turning them against me one careful lie at a time. The ballroom at the Jefferson Hotel was packed with 400 of Richmond's top financial professionals. My algorithm's success had made me somewhat of a quiet legend in certain circles, though I'd kept a low profile. This award was supposed to be my moment to step into the light. 20 minutes before the ceremony, Madison found me in the bathroom, fixing my lipstick. "Carmen," she said, her voice dripping with false concern, "I need to tell you something. I've been protecting you for years, but I can't anymore." My stomach dropped, but I kept my face neutral. "What are you talking about?" "The algorithm. The trading system. I know you've been telling people you created it, but we both know the truth. She stepped closer, her eyes gleaming with malicious triumph. I developed the initial concept. You just implemented it. And now you're about to accept an award for my work? I stared at her reflection in the mirror. Madison, you don't even understand what an algorithm is. I have emails, she said, pulling out her phone. Conversations where you asked for my input. Where I gave you the foundation ideas. She showed me screenshots, doctored emails with manipulated timestamps, taken from real conversations where she'd asked me to explain my work, now edited to look like she was the teacher and I was the student. I didn't want to do this, she continued, but I've already spoken to several people here tonight. Including James Morrison from the award committee. He was very interested in what I had to say. James Morrison. I'd seen Madison talking to him earlier, touching his arm, leaning in close with that practiced vulnerability she'd perfected over the years. Document everything, save texts, emails, call logs, and screenshots. Keep a daily log of incidents, no matter how small. Don't engage emotionally, stick to facts. Don't justify, defend, or over-explain. Let your evidence speak. I took a deep breath. Madison, if you do this, there's no coming back. She laughed, a tinkling sound that I'd once found endearing. Do what? Tell the truth? Finally get the recognition I deserve? You've had your turn, Carmen. You played the smart one, the successful one, for long enough. It's my time. Narcissists are master manipulators, yet their actions are never in alignment with their words. Perjury is taken very seriously in every courtroom except the family court system. But this wasn't family court. This was my professional reputation, my life's work. The ceremony began. I sat at the head table, Madison beside me, her hand occasionally reaching over to pat mine in a performance of sisterly support. I could see the whispers she'd started spreading through the crowd like wildfire. People were looking at me differently, with suspicion, doubt, judgment. When they called my name for the award, Madison stood up with me. I'm so proud of her, she announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. She's worked so hard to bring my vision to life. I walked to the podium on legs that felt like jelly. The award was heavy in my hands, a crystal obelisk that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. I looked out at the audience, saw the confusion on some faces, the knowing smirks on others who thought they were witnessing family drama play out in real time. Research suggests core features of the disorder are associated with poor prognosis in therapy, including slow progress to behavioral change, premature patient-initiated termination, and negative therapeutic alliance. Madison had never stayed in therapy long enough to change. But I had. I set the award down and pulled out my phone. Before I accept this honor, I said into the microphone, my voice steady despite my racing heart, I need to address something that was just brought to my attention. Madison's smile widened. She thought I was about to credit her. My sister, Madison, has claimed she created the foundation for my algorithm. She's shown some of you edited emails suggesting I stole her work. I clicked my phone, and the presentation screen behind me lit up. I'd like to show you something. The first slide was a screenshot of the LLC registration for my algorithm, dated 3 years before Madison claimed to have inspired it. The next showed my copyright filing. Then came the real emails, the unedited versions where Madison asked me to explain what cryptocurrency even is and why anyone would need an algorithm to trade. But the piece de resistance was the video. 2 months earlier, anticipating something like this, I'd had coffee with Madison and recorded our conversation. In it, I asked her to explain, in her own words, what my algorithm did. Her response was a word salad of buzzwords that made no sense. When I asked her about specific technical aspects, she'd laughed and said, "Oh, Carmen, you know I don't understand any of that computer stuff." That's your thing. The ballroom was silent as the video played. Madison's face had gone from smug to pale to furious red. You recorded me without my permission, she hissed, loud enough for the microphone to pick up. Virginia is a one-party consent state, I replied calmly. I've been documenting everything for 2 years, Madison. Every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to steal credit for my work. Like that viral TikTok story where my narcissistic parents told my brother he could take my house, the shocking continuation where the brother tries to steal the house, but the poster had documented everything. I had learned from others' experiences. But the most important documentation, I continued, turning back to the audience, is this. The screen changed to show a series of timestamps, login records from my algorithm's development environment, Git commits showing my work, hundreds of hours of sole development, all with my digital signature. And this, I added, as the screen showed one final document, a cease and desist letter from my attorney to Madison, dated that morning, regarding her false claims and defamation. Madison stood up so fast her chair toppled backward. "You're sick," she screamed. "You've always been jealous of me. Mom and Dad always loved me more because you're a cold, calculating robot who can't feel anything. Like the case study from BMC Psychiatry where the narcissistic father constantly put down his daughter, stating she was a failure as a wife and mother while contributing nothing himself. Madison was projecting her own failures onto me. I feel plenty, I said quietly, but the microphone carried my words throughout the silent ballroom. I feel 13 years of pain from having every achievement stolen or diminished. I feel the exhaustion of being the family hero who was never allowed to be human. And right now, I feel free." Security had arrived, gently but firmly escorting Madison toward the exit as she continued her tirade. The last thing I heard her scream was, "I made you who you are." "No," I said to the audience, many of whom were recording on their phones. "I made me who I am. Despite you." The applause started slowly, then built to thunderous levels. But I wasn't done. "I'm donating this award's $50,000 prize to the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Foundation," I announced. "For all the family heroes out there who are told their light is too bright, their success too threatening, their independence too dangerous to someone else's ego. You deserve to shine." Like the Safe Kids International movement and Fox News's Lost in the System investigative series that placed a spotlight on family court crises, it was time to spotlight the hidden abuse that happens in normal families. The video of Madison's meltdown went viral within hours. Someone had titled it "Sister Tries to Steal $12 Million Algorithm Credit, Gets Exposed." By morning, it had 52 million views across TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. But the public humiliation was just the beginning of Madison's downfall, and the start of my complete liberation. The viral video was never supposed to be revenge, it was supposed to be truth. But as I sat in my attorney's office the morning after the summit, reviewing the flood of messages, emails, and legal threats from Madison, I realized that sometimes the truth is the most devastating revenge of all. "She's claiming intentional infliction of emotional distress," my lawyer, Patricia Chen, said, sliding Madison's hastily filed lawsuit across the desk. "Also defamation, theft of intellectual property, she's literally claiming you stole the algorithm from her, and something called sibling alienation syndrome, which I'm pretty sure she made up. Education on NPD needs to begin in law school, and continuing education on personality disorders should be mandatory for each person who has a hand in the family court system." Fortunately, Patricia had extensive experience with narcissistic personality disorders and litigation. "What's our exposure?" I asked. Patricia smiled. "Zero. You have documentation going back years. She has doctored emails and a history of false claims. But Carmen, she's not going to stop. Narcissistic injury like this?" She shook her head. "She's going to escalate." She was right. Within 48 hours, Madison had started a GoFundMe claiming I'd stolen her life's work, raised $236 before being reported for fraud. Posted a 47-part Instagram story about our childhood, painting me as an abusive older sister. Contacted my employer with concerns about my mental stability. Filed complaints with the Better Business Bureau against my LLC. Created multiple fake social media accounts to harass my colleagues. Hired a reputation management company to flood Google with negative articles about me. If trust between parents is very low, which is almost always the case in family law disputes, where information is missing, a negative attribution will be made to form a conclusion. Madison was creating her own narrative to fill the gaps in her followers' knowledge. But I had learned something crucial from my support group: you can still show patterns of behavior. Evidence doesn't always mean a smoking gun, it can be inconsistencies, timelines, or emotional manipulation that paints a broader picture. You don't need to win them over, you need to plant seeds of doubt in the narcissist story. I hired a forensic accountant to trace Madison's financial history. What we found was illuminating. $847,000 taken from our parents' retirement accounts over 10 years. 17 failed businesses, all funded by family money. 3 lawsuits from former business partners claiming fraud. 6 restraining orders from ex-boyfriends. A pattern of identity theft using family members' information. This is a goldmine, Patricia said. But how do you want to use it? I thought about ensuring documentation focuses on aspects relevant to the case, such as instances of manipulation, gaslighting, or any form of emotional or psychological abuse. This wasn't about destroying Madison, it was about protecting myself and others from her. Strategically, I decided. Let's build a comprehensive case. Over the next month, I assembled what Patricia called the Madison files. Financial fraud documentation. Screenshots of Madison using my social security number to apply for credit cards. Bank records showing mysterious transfers from my accounts during her apartment stays. Receipts for items she'd purchased with stolen cards and then claimed as gifts. Professional sabotage evidence. Emails she'd sent to my clients from spoofed addresses. Recording of her calling my employer pretending to be me and trying to quit. Documentation of her applying to jobs at my company using my credentials. Pattern of abuse timeline. 13 years of incidents, cross-referenced with my therapy notes. Witness statements from 47 people who'd observed her behavior. Medical records showing stress-related health issues during peak abuse periods. Witness accounts from friends and family or professionals who have observed the abuse, along with expert evidence like psychological reports evaluating the narcissist's mental health, establish a pattern of behavior that may strengthen your case. I also did something else. I reached out to Madison's previous victims. Jennifer, her college roommate, she convinced everyone I was stalking her after I asked her to pay her half of the rent. I had to transfer schools. Marcus, her ex-boyfriend, she emptied my bank account and told the police I was abusing her when I tried to get it back. I spent 3 nights in jail. David, her former business partner, she sold our client list to a competitor and claimed I forced her to do it. I lost everything. Each person had documentation. Each had been too isolated, too gaslit, too exhausted to fight back alone. But together, we had a pattern that was undeniable. Narcissistic parents often see litigation not as a means to find the best arrangement but as a way to punish or control. This often leads to unnecessary court filings, refusal to compromise, and dragging out legal proceedings. Madison was following the playbook perfectly. Then Madison made a critical error. She leaked my personal information online, my address, phone number, and a call to action for her followers to make Carmen understand the pain she's caused. The doxing led to death threats, vandalism at my apartment, and someone trying to break into my car. Patricia's eyes gleamed. She just committed multiple felonies. Doxing, inciting harassment, conspiracy to commit stalking. This is no longer civil, it's criminal. We filed police reports. We documented everything. We prepared for war. But I also did something unexpected. I reached out to a documentary filmmaker who'd been following the story since the video went viral. I want to tell the whole story, I said. Not just my revenge, but the pattern. How narcissistic abuse works, how it hides in plain sight, how victims become heroes who enable their own abuse. The filmmaker, Alex Chen, no relation to Patricia, had personal experience with narcissistic abuse. My mother was like Madison, they said. I spent 30 years as the family hero before I broke free. Let's expose this pattern for what it is. We began filming interviews, with me, with Madison's other victims, with experts on NPD and family dynamics. The goal was to educate legal professionals in understanding the traits and manipulation tactics of narcissists, and how different forms of abuse are perpetrated. Madison, predictably, tried to get an injunction to stop the documentary. The judge, after reviewing the evidence, not only denied her request but noted on record that Ms. Madison appears to be using the legal system as a tool for harassment rather than justice. Even with court orders in hand, it can be difficult to enforce court orders. But I had something more powerful than court orders. I had the truth, meticulously documented and ready for deployment. The final piece of my strategy came from an unexpected source. Our parents, who had been silent since the Summit incident, finally reached out. They were broke. Madison had drained them dry, and now they were facing foreclosure. "We need your help, Carmen," my mother said over the phone, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "We know we haven't been good parents to you. But please." I could have said no. Part of me wanted to. But I remembered what my therapist had said: healthy people are flexible, they give and receive, they do some things well and some things not so well. Liking themselves, they have no need to prove themselves. The hero, like many great actors, only flourishes while they are on stage and sink into depression when the applause dies down. I'll help, I said. But there are conditions. You testify truthfully about Madison's behavior. You acknowledge the enabling. You get therapy. And Madison gets nothing more from any of us. They agreed. Their testimony would become crucial in what was to come. The stage was set. The evidence was compiled. The allies were assembled. The documentary was in production. Madison had isolated herself with her lies, while I had built a foundation of truth. The revenge wasn't something I would execute, it was something Madison would bring upon herself, with every lie she told, every escalation she attempted, every bridge she burned in her narcissistic rage. All I had to do was hold up the mirror and let the world see her true reflection. The execution began at 9 a.m. on May 15, 2024, in Courtroom 7 of the Richmond Circuit Court. Madison had escalated her civil lawsuit, demanding $12 million in damages, conveniently, the exact amount she'd heard my algorithm might be worth. She arrived dressed like a grieving widow, complete with a tissue she dabbed at dry eyes. I wore a simple blue suit and carried a banker's box of evidence. In court, it's essential to remain composed. This not only helps in presenting your case more effectively but also contrasts starkly with the potentially erratic behavior of the narcissist. Madison's lawyer, a flashy personal injury attorney she'd convinced to work on contingency, opened with theatrical flair. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're here because of the ultimate betrayal, a sister stealing from a sister, not just money or ideas, but identity itself. Madison took the stand first. Her testimony was a masterpiece of manipulation, tears at precisely the right moments, voice-breaking as she described how I'd always been jealous of her natural creativity, how I'd systematically stolen her ideas since childhood. Can you provide specific examples of ideas Ms. Carmen stole? Her lawyer prompted. The lemonade stand when we were kids, that was my idea, but Carmen took credit. My science fair projects that she helped with but then entered under her name. And of course, the algorithm that's made her millions while I struggle to pay rent. Each lie was delivered with such conviction that even I almost believed them. It is common for people to lie in the family court system, and there do exist those people who use their children to attack the other parent. Judicial manipulation is harmful and devastating for the victim parent. But this wasn't family court, and I wasn't a helpless child. Patricia's cross-examination was surgical. Ms. Madison, you claim you created the algorithm's foundation. Can you explain what a hash function is? I don't need to understand technical details to have vision. Can you define cryptocurrency? It's digital money. What programming languages did you use to develop this algorithm? I provided the concept. Carmen handled the implementation. So you cannot name a single programming language? Objection. Madison's lawyer called out. Harassment. Overruled, the judge said. The witness claims to have created a complex trading algorithm. Technical knowledge is relevant. Patricia continued. Ms. Madison, I'd like to show you Exhibit A. She pulled up a screenshot on the courtroom screen. This is your Instagram post from 3 years ago. Can you read the highlighted portion? Madison squinted at the screen, her face paling. She'd posted, so proud of my nerdy sister at Carmen Tech for winning some coding competition. I don't understand any of that computer stuff but go sis. #ProudSister #TechNerd. This was posted 6 months after you claimed to have developed the algorithm concept. Were you lying then or are you lying now? I was, being supportive. Humble. Exhibit B, Patricia continued, pulling up another document. Your job application to Wells Fargo, submitted last year. Under technical skills, you wrote none, focused on people skills and creativity. If you created a revolutionary trading algorithm, why wouldn't you list it? Madison's carefully constructed facade was cracking. I was being modest. Exhibit C through J, Patricia said, as 8 more documents appeared. 8 instances over 5 years where you publicly stated you don't understand technology, including a recorded podcast where you said, quote, Carmen got all the brains in the family, I just got the personality. The jury was shifting, exchanging glances. But Patricia wasn't done. Ms. Madison, are you familiar with the term narcissistic personality disorder? Objection. Madison's lawyer shot up. Prejudicial. Your Honor, Patricia said calmly, Ms. Madison has publicly discussed her mental health journey on social media. She self-diagnosed with various conditions. I'm asking about her familiarity with terms she's used. I'll allow it, the judge ruled. Madison lifted her chin. I'm an empath, actually. I feel everything too deeply. Carmen's the narcissist, she has no emotions. I see. And would an empath create fake emails to support false claims? Patricia pulled up the forensic analysis of Madison's doctored emails, showing the metadata proving they'd been altered. Would an empath steal their sister's social security number? Credit reports appeared showing Madison's fraud. Would an empath do this? The screen filled with a compilation video of Madison's greatest hits of manipulation, lies, and abuse, captured from security cameras, doorbell cameras, and recordings made with consent in one-party consent states. The jury watched Madison scream at our elderly parents for money. They saw her on a recorded call bragging about destroying Carmen's boring life. They witnessed her directing her followers to harass me. Madison stood up in the witness box. Those are out of context. Sit down, Ms. Madison, the judge ordered sternly. But the most damaging evidence came from an unexpected source. Madison's former therapist, Dr. Angela Torres, had been subpoenaed after Madison had signed a release thinking it would help her case. Ms. Madison attended 3 sessions with me, Dr. Torres testified. She explicitly stated she wanted documentation that her sister was abusing her to use in future litigation. When I explained I couldn't provide false documentation, she threatened to destroy my practice with negative reviews. Did she ever mention creating an algorithm? No. She said her sister was, quote, wasting her life with boring computer stuff and that she was the truly creative one who deserved success. These patients shared a lifelong history of distress associated with unmet expectations, unrealized goals, and unfulfilling relationships. Both patients had sought psychotherapy and pharmacologic treatment throughout their lives. But Madison had never stayed long enough to actually work on herself. Then came my turn to testify. I didn't perform. I simply told the truth, documented with evidence. Bank records showing I'd funded the algorithm development alone. Git repositories with thousands of commits in my name only. Registration documents for the LLC and patents. Contracts with clients that predated Madison's claims by years. Academic papers I'd published on the algorithm's methodology. But the most powerful moment was when I played a voicemail Madison had left me 2 days before the summit. Hey sis, I'm so proud of you for getting that award. You've worked so hard on your little computer project. Can't wait to celebrate your success. Her own words, in her own voice, destroying her own case. Madison's lawyer tried to salvage during redirect. Ms. Madison, how do you explain these inconsistencies? Madison's mask finally slipped completely. She's turned everyone against me. She's always been the favorite. I deserve something. I'm the one who suffered. She got everything, the brains, the success, the money, and I got nothing. It's not fair. Narcissistic personality disorder is characterized by an inflated sense of self-importance, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy for others. Narcissistic personalities can vary from an overvalued, entitled self-image characterized by aggressive, exploitative behaviors. Madison was displaying it all for the jury to see. The verdict was swift. Not only did Madison lose her lawsuit, but the jury awarded me $500,000 in damages for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The judge also issued a permanent restraining order and referred the case to the district attorney for criminal fraud charges. But the legal victory was just the beginning. The documentary, The Hero's Shadow, Surviving Narcissistic Family Abuse, premiered at the Richmond Film Festival 2 weeks later. It featured not just my story, but those of dozen other family heroes who'd been systematically abused by narcissistic family members. The Reddit community r/raised by narcissists was featured prominently, showing how 97,000 subscribers supported each other through similar experiences. Madison tried to get an injunction against the documentary. The judge not only denied it but ordered her to pay my legal fees for the frivolous and harassing litigation. The film went viral after Netflix picked it up. Suddenly, Madison's name was synonymous with narcissistic abuse. Her Instagram followers abandoned her. Her lifestyle coaching business collapsed. 3 of her ex-boyfriends came forward with their own stories, leading to additional charges. The final blow came from the IRS. My forensic accountant had discovered Madison hadn't paid taxes on the money she'd stolen from our parents, claiming it as gifts while our parents had documented them as loans on their taxes. The resulting audit revealed years of tax fraud. The impacts of a diagnosis of narcissistic abuse are wide-ranging. On the extreme end, it could result in a finding that the risks to the victim outweigh the benefit of a relationship, because the narcissistic person is only capable of surface-level relationships and likely to use relationships to further abuse victims. Our parents, now in therapy and freed from Madison's financial drain, finally saw the truth. Their testimony at Madison's criminal trial was devastating. "We enabled her," my father said, tears streaming down his face. "We saw Carmen succeeding and thought Madison needed more help. We didn't realize we were feeding a monster. Carmen tried to tell us, but we called her jealous, selfish. We failed both our daughters." Madison was convicted of fraud, identity theft, and tax evasion. She received 18 months in federal prison and was ordered to pay $1.2 million in restitution, money she didn't have. The day of her sentencing, she screamed at me across the courtroom, "You destroyed my life." "No, Madison," I replied calmly. "I just stopped letting you destroy mine." Madison's downfall was as public as it was complete. The documentary had made her infamous. She became the poster child for narcissistic abuse. Her meltdown at the summit played in psychology classrooms as a textbook example of narcissistic rage and collapse. Prison didn't humble Madison, it hardened her. She started a blog from federal prison called Wrongfully Convicted, where she continued to claim she was the victim of a conspiracy. Each post was more unhinged than the last, filled with elaborate theories about how I'd mind-controlled the jury and paid off the judges. Stories of breaking up with abusive family members are juicy gems in American magazines, and the no-contact vogue is everywhere on TikTok, with minor influencers staging extended story times about how they one day stopped speaking to their sibling. Perhaps relatedly, estrangement is on the rise, with one study reporting a silent epidemic of broken families. But Madison's story wasn't inspirational, it was cautionary. Her former followers turned against her viciously. The same people who donated to her GoFundMe now created Madison exposed threads, sharing their own stories of being manipulated by her. Someone leaked her prison emails where she tried to con other inmates into giving her their commissary money with promises of fame when her wrongful conviction was overturned. The financial devastation was complete. $1.2 million owed in restitution. $500,000 judgment from our civil case. $750,000 in IRS penalties and back taxes. $300,000 in legal fees across multiple cases. Zero assets, as everything had been fraudulently obtained. Her social media accounts, once her primary source of narcissistic supply with 50,000 followers, dwindled to a few hundred conspiracy theorists and hate watchers. Brands that had once sent her free products now publicly distanced themselves. Her lifestyle coaching website was taken down after multiple fraud complaints. Typically there is a family scapegoat who is made to bear the main burden of the family's problems, frustration, and unhappiness, as well as the dominant narcissist's projected self-loathing. But with Madison in prison, she could no longer project her failures onto me. The family dynamics shifted dramatically. Our extended family, who had always bought into Madison's victim narrative, were forced to confront their complicity. My Aunt Helen, who'd often chided me for not helping your poor sister more, sent a long apology letter. I see it now. Every family event, she had a crisis. Every time you succeeded, she had a tragedy. We all fell for it because it was easier to pressure you to give in than to confront her. We made you the family hero and her the eternal victim, and that wasn't fair to either of you. My parents' journey was more complex. The therapy they'd agreed to as part of my helping them revealed decades of enabling patterns. In narcissistic families, the enabler reinforces the power of the narcissist by engaging in manipulation, assisting with gaslighting, acting as a flying monkey, and pursuing other avenues for psychological abuse. They tend to the needs of the narcissist, keeping them happy. We created her, my mother admitted during a family therapy session I agreed to attend. Every time she failed, we cushioned the fall. Every time she lied, we made excuses. We thought we were being loving parents, but we were enabling a monster. The therapeutic process revealed that Madison had likely developed her narcissistic traits as a survival mechanism in response to our parents' inconsistent parenting, showering her with attention when she was in crisis but ignoring her otherwise. Adverse childhood experiences, particularly emotional neglect combined with parental overvaluation, can impair emotional regulation and self-worth, contributing to the development of narcissistic traits. Parental overvaluation is linked to grandiose narcissism, while childhood neglect and abuse are associated with vulnerable narcissism. This didn't excuse Madison's behavior, but it explained it. And it helped me understand my own role as the family hero better. I had been parentified early, taking responsibility for everyone else's emotions and failures. Madison's former victims formed an unexpected support group. Jennifer, Marcus, David, and others who'd been destroyed by her manipulations found healing in shared experience. We met monthly, calling ourselves survivors of Madison, partly as a joke, partly as truth. She took 2 years of my life, Marcus shared during one meeting. But watching her face consequences for once, it's like I can finally breathe again. The criminal trial had revealed more victims we didn't know about. An elderly neighbor Madison had conned out of $30,000 for a fake investment. A nonprofit she'd embezzled from while volunteering. 3 separate GoFundMe campaigns for fake illnesses and emergencies. A woman whose identity she'd stolen to open credit cards. Each revelation added to her sentence and restitution. By the time all cases were consolidated, Madison owed over $3 million she would never be able to pay. The media attention was relentless. True crime podcasts dissected our family dynamics. Psychology YouTube channels analyzed her courtroom behavior. Someone even created a Madison bingo card for her prison blog posts, with squares like claims conspiracy, mentions being an empath, and blames Carmen. Even if everyone is suffering, they must smile for the family photo. Everyone is expected to swallow and endure the dominant narcissist's irrational, explosive, and perhaps also violent rage. This may be magnified by other forms of mental illness and/or addiction. Our family photo albums became evidence of this forced performance, everyone smiling while Madison created chaos behind the scenes. But the most shocking revelation came 6 months into Madison's sentence. A fellow inmate reached out to me through her lawyer. Madison had been bragging about hidden assets, cryptocurrency she'd bought with stolen money, hidden under fake identities. The FBI's cybercrime unit investigated and found nearly $400,000 in various crypto wallets, all purchased with fraudulently obtained funds. This led to additional federal charges and extended her sentence by 3 years. Madison's final attempt at manipulation came through a letter she sent me from prison. Carmen. Despite everything you've done to me, I forgive you. I understand you're sick with jealousy and couldn't handle me surpassing you. When I get out, I'll be stronger than ever. I'm writing a book about surviving narcissistic abuse from a sibling. Publishers are already interested. You may have won this battle, but I'll win the war. I always do. Your sister, whether you like it or not. Madison. P.S. I know about the $8 million deal. I deserve half. I framed the letter. Not out of sentiment, but as a reminder that narcissists never truly change, they just adapt their tactics. Research suggests core features of the disorder are associated with poor prognosis and therapy, including slow progress to behavioral change. The publishers she mentioned? They didn't exist. I checked. The book she was writing? Her cellmate leaked portions of it online. It was a barely coherent manifesto that portrayed her as a Christ-like figure persecuted for her gifts. No publisher would touch it. Her commissary account showed she was still running small cons in prison, convincing new inmates she had money coming and borrowing against it. Some patterns, it seemed, were too ingrained to break. The fallout extended beyond Madison. Her story became a cautionary tale in business schools about due diligence. Law schools used our case to teach about documentation and evidence. Therapists cited it in discussions about family dynamics and personality disorders. The central focus of judges in the family court system should be on children's rights and protecting the children. When there are accusations of abuse and neglect, it is imperative that these items are taken seriously and investigated by highly skilled and trained individuals. Our case, though not involving children, had helped establish precedents for how courts handle narcissistic abuse claims. I received hundreds of messages from other family heroes, trapped in similar dynamics. Their stories were heartbreakingly familiar. My brother claims he invented my business idea. My sister tells everyone she ghostwrites my books. My mother takes credit for my PhD. My father says my success is all thanks to his genetics. Each message reminded me that Madison wasn't unique, she was part of a pattern that plays out in families everywhere, usually without consequences. The financial settlement was ironic. Madison owed me $500,000 she'd never be able to pay. The court garnished her prison wages, 23 cents per hour, meaning she'd need to work approximately 2.1 million hours to pay me back. At that rate, full restitution would take 239 years. I didn't need the money. The algorithm sale had gone through for $8 million, with additional consulting fees bringing my net worth to over $12 million. But the judgment stood as a legal acknowledgement of the harm she'd caused. As Madison served her time, I noticed something interesting in the analytics of the documentary. The most rewatched scene wasn't her courtroom meltdown or her summit explosion. It was a quiet moment where I said, I spent so long trying to save her from herself that I forgot to save myself from her. That resonated with thousands of family heroes who'd done the same. 3 years after Madison's conviction, I stood in front of 500 people at the National Conference on Family Trauma and Resilience in Washington, D.C. My keynote was titled, From Hero to Human, Breaking Free from Narcissistic Family Systems. Recovery isn't about revenge, I began, looking out at an audience filled with therapists, survivors, and researchers. It's about reclaiming your right to exist without apology. Being aware of the dysfunctional roles in your family can help you to exit the dysfunction and improve your family relationships. There are many factors that contribute to which roles you adopt. It's important to assess and change any dysfunctional roles in order to support your emotional health. My life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. The algorithm sale had given me financial freedom, but more importantly, the process of confronting Madison had given me emotional freedom. I no longer felt responsible for managing everyone else's emotions. I no longer dimmed my light to make others comfortable. The Carmen Foundation, which I established with part of the settlement, provided legal and therapeutic resources for survivors of narcissistic abuse. We'd helped 300 families in our first year alone, providing pro bono legal services for those documenting abuse and filing restraining orders. Our Jacksonville office was located in the same building as Greener Side Counseling, at 11363, San Jose Boulevard, where I'd first found support during that work trip years ago. We partnered with them to provide integrated services, legal help and therapeutic support under one roof. My parents and I had rebuilt our relationship from scratch. Without Madison's constant chaos and manipulation, they finally saw me not as the family hero, but as their daughter who'd been carrying too much for too long. I'm proud of you, my father said during our weekly lunch, a tradition we'd started after Madison's imprisonment. Not for your success or your money, but for your courage. You stood up to her when we couldn't. You mean when you wouldn't, I corrected gently. We'd agreed to radical honesty in our rebuilt relationship. He nodded, accepting the correction. When we wouldn't. We chose the easy path of enabling over the hard path of accountability. You chose differently. Through self-awareness and self-reflection, we can work to change any dysfunctional patterns we took with us into adulthood. My parents, now in their 60s, were proof that it's never too late to change. Madison had been released 6 months ago, after serving 2.5 years of her sentence. She'd moved to Arizona, legally barred from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of any of my properties or businesses. Her post-prison life was a sad shadow of her former grandiosity. She worked at a call center, lived in a studio apartment, and maintained a small blog with barely 100 followers. Her attempts to rebuild her influencer status had failed, the internet doesn't forget, and her name was permanently linked with narcissistic abuse. She'd tried to sell her story to tabloids, but even they weren't interested in a convicted fraud's version of events. Her promised tell-all book never materialized beyond rambling blog posts that contradicted themselves every few paragraphs. I kept tabs on her not out of obsession, but out of self-protection. Narcissists often attempt hoovering, trying to suck their victims back into their orbit. The pattern of behavior commonly escalates over time, usually when the perpetrator loses control of the victim, after separation occurs. Sure enough, on the 3rd anniversary of the Summit incident, Madison attempted contact through a flying monkey, a mutual cousin who just wanted the family to heal. She's changed, Cousin Terry insisted over the phone. She's been through so much. She just wants to apologize. Has she paid any restitution? I asked. Well, no, but... Has she acknowledged any of her crimes without blaming others? She says she was sick. Has she made amends to any of her other victims? Silence. Then she hasn't changed, I concluded. She's just running out of supply. Manipulation tactics such as blaming, disrespect, and gaslighting are commonly utilized in these families, and are used to further the control of the narcissistic individual. Even from a distance, through flying monkeys, Madison was still trying to manipulate. My own healing had been profound. The hypervigilance that once served me in crypto trading had softened. I could relax without waiting for the next crisis. I'd learned to accept compliments without immediately deflecting or minimizing. I'd even started dating, something I'd never felt safe doing while Madison was in my life. James was a software engineer who'd attended one of my talks on surviving family trauma. He understood boundaries, respected my journey, and had his own history of breaking free from a toxic family system. "You know what I love about you," he said one evening as we watched the sunset from my new home's deck. "You know who you are. No pretense, no performance. Just Carmen." The greatest fear heroes tend to face in their relationships is just to let themselves be known as they really are, beyond their roles. This usually requires that they remember and relive the secret anguish, fear, and isolation that, as children, they felt. With James, I could just be. The documentary about our story had won several awards and sparked a national conversation about narcissistic abuse. Universities added it to their psychology curricula. Support groups used it as a discussion starter. It had helped thousands recognize their own toxic family dynamics. But the most meaningful responses came from other family heroes. "I watched your documentary and finally understood why I feel exhausted all the time. I've been managing my sister's emotions for 40 years. Your story gave me permission to stop enabling my brother. He's furious, but I'm free. I'm 67 years old and just now realizing I was the family hero. Thank you for showing me it's never too late to change." I started a podcast called Heroes and Humans where I interviewed other survivors. Each story was unique but followed similar patterns: the responsible child who became the family's emotional manager, who enabled narcissistic abuse by trying to keep peace, who lost themselves in service to others' dysfunction. The pressure of the hero role can cause them to become overly responsible and perfectionistic, causing problems from childhood into adulthood. They may berate themselves for tiny mistakes and experience fear of appearing less than perfect. This can lead to struggles with anxiety and addiction as the hero tries harder to maintain their image. My own perfectionism had been perhaps my greatest challenge to overcome. Learning to make mistakes, to be vulnerable, to ask for help, these were harder than confronting Madison had been. But they were also more rewarding. The Carmen Foundation expanded into a national organization with chapters in 12 cities. We provided free legal consultations for documenting abuse, support groups for family heroes and scapegoats, educational resources for therapists and lawyers, advocacy for better legal protections against emotional abuse, scholarships for survivors pursuing education. One of our scholarship recipients was Jennifer, Madison's former college roommate. She'd gone back to school to become a therapist specializing in narcissistic abuse recovery. "Madison destroying my life led me to my life's purpose," Jennifer said at our annual gala. "I wouldn't thank her for it, but I'm grateful for where it led me." The gala raised $2.3 million for our programs. Attendees included judges, therapists, survivors, and researchers. The keynote speaker was Dr. Angela Torres, Madison's former therapist who had testified at the trial. Narcissistic personality disorder affects not just the individual, but entire family systems, Dr. Torres explained. The Carmen Foundation is pioneering work in helping those secondary victims, the family heroes, scapegoats, and lost children who've been damaged by proximity to narcissistic abuse. As I watched the gala from the back of the room, I thought about how different my life had become. 3 years ago, I would have been managing every detail, ensuring everyone else's comfort while ignoring my own needs. Now, I had a capable team who handled the event while I could simply be present. My phone buzzed with a Google alert I'd set up for Madison's name, a habit I maintained for safety. She'd posted a new blog entry titled, "My Truth, the Sister Who Destroyed Me." I didn't read it. I didn't need to. Madison's truth had always been fiction, and I no longer needed to engage with her distorted reality. Instead, I looked around the room at hundreds of survivors finding connection, validation, and hope. This was my truth, that healing was possible, that documentation could defeat gaslighting, that family heroes could learn to be human. 6 months later, I received unexpected news. Madison had been arrested again, this time for running a romance scam targeting elderly men online. She'd been posing as a successful entrepreneur wrongfully imprisoned by a jealous sister, using our story but reversing our roles. Her new victims had lost a combined $180,000 before one of them Googled her name and found the documentary. The FBI's Elder Fraud Unit took the case seriously, especially given her prior convictions. She used her photos, the FBI agent told me. Claimed they were her from before her wrongful imprisonment. She was literally trying to steal your identity again. This time, I felt no anger, no satisfaction, just a deep sadness. Madison was trapped in a cycle she couldn't break, compulsively repeating the same patterns that had destroyed her life. Personality disordered people struggle to change because their disorder is integrated into their sense of self. They must be able to acknowledge and experience their problems in order to see that change is needed. Staying the same is familiar, while change is threatening. Madison would likely never escape her own mental prison. The romance scam conviction added another 5 years to Madison's sentence. At 35, she would spend most of her 30s in federal prison. Any chance at a normal life had evaporated. Our parents were devastated by Madison's rearrest. They'd held on to hope that prison might reform her, that she might emerge capable of genuine change. We failed her, my mother wept during our family therapy session. We created a monster by never holding her accountable. You didn't create her personality disorder, our therapist reminded gently. But you did enable it. The question now is how you move forward. Moving forward meant accepting that Madison might never be part of our lives again. It meant grieving the daughter and sister she could have been if she'd gotten proper help early enough. It meant building a family without her. A year later, I married James in a small ceremony in Chesapeake, at the botanical garden where I used to escape as a child when Madison's chaos became too much. Only 50 people attended, chosen family and friends who'd supported my journey. My parents walked me down the aisle together, both crying. "We're so proud of who you've become," my father whispered. "Not the hero we forced you to be, but the woman you chose to become." Madison wasn't invited, of course. She was serving year 2 of her additional sentence. But she managed to insert herself anyway. A letter arrived at the venue, addressed to the wedding party. Security intercepted it, following the protocol we'd established. The letter was typical Madison: accusations, manipulations, and a demand for money as a wedding gift to make amends. It was entered into evidence for her ongoing criminal cases. During the reception, Sarah from my Jacksonville support group gave a toast. Carmen showed us that family heroes don't have to remain in that role forever. We can choose to be human, to be flawed, to be free. Here's to Carmen and James, and to all of us choosing freedom. The Carmen Foundation continued to grow. We partnered with law schools to educate future attorneys about narcissistic abuse in family court systems. We funded research into the long-term effects of being the family hero. We created safe houses for those escaping narcissistic family abuse. One of our most successful programs was Hero to Human, a 12-week course that helped family heroes recognize and break their patterns. Week 1 to 3, recognizing the hero role. Week 4 to 6, understanding narcissistic family dynamics. Week 7 to 9, setting boundaries and documenting abuse. Week 10 to 12, building an authentic life. The program had a 94% completion rate and testimonials that brought me to tears. I'm 45 and finally understanding why I've been exhausted my whole life. My narcissistic mother no longer controls me through guilt. I can have achievements that are just mine, not the family's. 3 years into our marriage, James and I had a daughter. We named her Hope, not for sentimental reasons, but as a declaration that cycles could be broken, that she would never have to be the family hero or scapegoat or lost child. She would just get to be herself. Madison found out about Hope through prison networks. Narcissists always have their flying monkeys. She attempted to file for aunt's rights from prison, claiming she had a right to a relationship with her niece. The judge dismissed it in less than 5 minutes, noting Madison's extensive criminal record and the permanent restraining order. As Hope grew, I was hypervigilant about not parentifying her, not making her responsible for managing adult emotions. When I succeeded at something, it was my success, not something she had to participate in or prop up. When I failed, it was my failure to process, not hers to fix. "You're breaking the cycle," my therapist observed during a session when Hope was 3. "She's growing up seeing that adults manage their own emotions, that children can just be children." The documentary about our story had a follow-up 5 years later. The Hero's Shadow, 5 years later, explored what happened to all of us after Madison's conviction. Madison declined to participate from prison, but sent a statement claiming the documentary was propaganda and she was writing her own documentary script that would expose the truth. It never materialized. The follow-up showed the ripple effects of our story. 43 states had introduced legislation better protecting victims of emotional abuse. The American Psychological Association had updated guidelines for treating narcissistic abuse survivors. Family court judges were receiving mandatory training on personality disorders. Thousands of support groups had formed worldwide. But the most powerful moment was when they interviewed other family heroes who'd found freedom after seeing our story. A doctor who'd cut contact with her narcissistic brother after 30 years of abuse. A teacher who'd stopped funding her sister's endless crises. A CEO who'd finally told the truth about his mother taking credit for his success. Each story reinforced that I wasn't alone, that Madison wasn't unique, that these patterns played out in families everywhere. As I write this, it's been 7 years since the summit confrontation. Madison is serving her latest sentence, with 3 more years to go. Our parents have found peace in their later years, free from the chaos of enabling. The Carmen Foundation has helped over 10,000 families. And me? I'm no longer the family hero. I'm not performing strength or managing others' emotions or dimming my light to make others comfortable. I'm just Carmen. Wife, mother, advocate, survivor. Human. The $4.6 million I'd hidden from Madison became $12 million after the algorithm sale, then grew to $20 million through investments and the documentary. But the real wealth isn't monetary, it's the freedom to exist without apology, to succeed without guilt, to fail without shame. Madison wrote me one final letter last month. I didn't read it, but my lawyer summarized, she's found religion in prison and wants forgiveness. She's changed. She's sorry. She needs money for commissary. The pattern never changes, only the tactics evolve. I didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. Instead, I took Hope to the park where I used to hide as a child, reading books while Madison created drama at home. We fed the ducks, played on the swings, and I watched my daughter be what I never got to be, just a kid, free from the weight of managing adult dysfunction. Mama, why are you crying? Hope asked, her little hand patting my cheek. Happy tears, baby. Just happy tears. That evening, James found me in my office, looking at the framed letter Madison had sent on our wedding day, the one demanding money as a wedding gift to make amends. Why do you keep that? He asked, not for the first time. To remember, I said. To remember that no matter how far I've come, the pattern is always there, waiting. To remember that vigilance is the price of freedom. You're free, Carmen. She can't hurt you anymore. I know, I said, turning the frame face down. But there are thousands of Madisons out there, and thousands of Carmens still trapped. The work isn't done. The Carmen Foundation's mission had evolved beyond just helping victims. We were working to prevent new victims by educating parents about the dangers of creating family heroes and scapegoats, about the importance of holding all children accountable, about recognizing narcissistic traits early and getting proper intervention. We'd partnered with children's hospitals to provide resources for families showing concerning dynamics. We'd created school programs teaching children about healthy boundaries and emotional regulation. We'd funded research into early intervention for personality disorders. The goal wasn't to demonize people like Madison, but to prevent more Madisons from being created through enabling and lack of accountability. And to prevent more Carmens from losing themselves in the role of family hero. My story went viral on Reddit's r/raised by narcissists, where Sea Turtles Can't Fly and other moderators had pinned it as a resource. The comments were overwhelming. This could be my story, just change the names. I'm the family hero and didn't know it had a name. Your sister sounds exactly like my mother. Thank you for showing that documentation defeats gaslighting. Each comment was a reminder that narcissistic abuse thrives in silence and isolation. By sharing our stories, we strip away its power. As I finished writing this story, I received an alert. Madison had started a prison YouTube channel called Wrongfully Convicted Woman Speaks. She had 47 subscribers. The comments were either from other inmates or people mocking her. I didn't watch. I didn't need to. Madison's story would always be about her victimhood, her persecution, her suffering. She would never acknowledge the trail of destruction she'd left behind. But my story? Our story, mine and the thousands of other family heroes who'd found freedom? Our story was about transformation. About documentation defeating gaslighting. About truth conquering manipulation. About choosing to be human instead of heroic. About learning that the greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's construction. Building a life so authentic, so fulfilling, so free that the narcissist's opinion becomes irrelevant. Madison took 13 years of my life. But she also, inadvertently, gave me purpose. Her abuse led to my advocacy. Her theft led to my protection of others. Her lies led to my commitment to truth. I wouldn't thank her for it. But I'm grateful for where it led. To everyone reading this who sees themselves in my story, document everything. Trust your instincts. Find your support system. Set your boundaries. And remember, you don't have to be the hero. You just have to be yourself. That's more than enough. That's everything. Epilogue, a final reckoning. 2 years after I finished writing this story, Madison was released from prison. She served 7 years total across her various sentences. She was 40 years old, banned from using the internet for fraud-related activities, and had $4.7 million in restitution judgments she would never be able to pay. She moved to a halfway house in Arizona, got a job at a warehouse, and for 6 months, seemed to be living quietly. Then the calls started. Not to me, the restraining order was permanent. But to our parents, now in their 70s. To cousins. To family friends. The message was always the same: Carmen had destroyed her life, stolen her ideas, turned everyone against her. She just needed a little money to get back on her feet, to hire a lawyer, to tell her truth. Most ignored her. Some, feeling guilty, sent small amounts. One cousin sent $500 before Googling Madison's name and seeing the documentary. Then Madison made her final mistake. She contacted Hope's school, claiming to be a concerned relative with important information about the child's mother. The school, following protocol, immediately contacted law enforcement. Madison had violated the restraining order. She was arrested at the warehouse, screaming about injustice and persecution. This time, the judge had no patience. Madison received 18 months for violation of a protective order and attempted harassment of a minor. As of today, she's serving that sentence. She's 42 years old and has spent nearly a decade of her adult life in prison. The narcissistic collapse is complete: no supply, no audience, no one left to manipulate. The Carmen Foundation continues to grow. We've helped 50,000 families. Changed laws in all 50 states. Trained thousands of judges and lawyers. Created a generation of children who will never have to be family heroes. And me? I'm 42 now too. Hope is 10, strong and free and utterly herself. James and I are expecting our second child. My parents, despite everything, have found peace in their final years. I no longer check Madison's name on Google. I no longer keep tabs on her activities. The hypervigilance has finally, truly relaxed. She's not my responsibility. She never was. I'm just Carmen. And that's enough.